first thing I'm going to have both of you do is just say and spell, right, your first and last names and your date of birth. Yeah. So I don't know, did you want to go? Yeah, we need your date of birth. Including the year?
That's hilarious.
It's for the archives.
Oh, for the archives.
Yeah.
Yes.
So Roy, did you want to start? Do you want to?
Okay. My name is Roy Skoreyko, and I was born July 31st. I can't remember the year, but July 31st.
Okay.
And I lived in a little town called, first of all, we lived in Wellington.
Mm-hmm.
It was up near Fort Saskatchewan around there, and then we moved to Elk Point.
Yeah.
When I was...
Roy, I'm just going to stop you for 1 second because we need to get your consent to share what you're going to say first. Okay, and we'll get Norm to introduce himself.
I'm Norman McLeod. So that's Norman.
Mm-hmm.
MC, capital Leod.
Mm-hmm.
And I was born on March 20th, 1946.
Awesome, thank you. And do you both consent to everything that's going to be interviewed and everything we talk about today to be shared with the Edmonton Archives?
I am.
Okay, amazing. So what I'd like to start with is to talk about activism and what that means to you.
Well, to me, activism means to be active and not looking at people with disabilities for their disability. Look at them for who they are. And I don't think people should be labeled just because they have a disability. That is something that we have to live with. And you don't label people, you label jars and you label cans.
That's a very good way to put it.
Yeah. Well, I think activism for me means really trying to create a world that works for everyone. And being involved and working with Roy and supporting Roy and others who have a developmental disability. You know, how do we create a society that sees them as equal and contributing members of our communities?
Amazing. Okay. The next question we're going to get into is, can you share a bit about your journey and how it's led you to advocating for those living with disabilities? Which is a big question.
It is a big question. Do you want to start,
But
Roy?
this is where we want to hear your story.
I'm learning.
So what brought you to advocating for people living with disabilities? What's your story?
Well, I lived in the largest institution, like I said, and I wanted to make a difference in people with disabilities' lives. So I got involved with the Inclusion Alberta, and I wanted to make a difference. There was a guy that was the director, the CEO there, and he told me, he said, well, you can either run from the floor or you can put your name forward. Now there were so many different positions. There was president and all the other ones. So I said I'd probably be better. I said to myself, I'd probably be better off to be as a director at large. And I put my name forward. I didn't get in the first time, but I'm a fighter, and I kept fighting, and I got in, and I sat on the board as a director at large, and I said I wanted to do something more. So I got involved, and I sat on their executive committee, which that was a committee that would bring decisions to the board. And then I wanted to push my name forward, and I ran for director at large in Inclusion Canada. But I had to put my name forward, and I didn't get in, and I got in the second time, and I wanted to make a difference there. I wanted to make people aware, on both boards, that people with disabilities were not going to go away. And when I moved out of McLeod Centre, I said, I made two promises to myself that I was going to do, and that was to make a better life for, for people with disabilities. And I wanted to assure the people with disabilities that are still living there that I'm there for them. I will not, and I cannot, and I will not I will not give up my support to those people. And I always said that I don't want people to, if I pass away, I don't want people to remember me for my disability. I want people to remember me for who I am, not a person with a disability.
They're lucky to have you standing up for them.
Yeah.
Well, I started my career back in the 60s, and during that time there really was not very much in the way of community services for people with a developmental disability. And the only place really that provided supports was a place called McLeod Centre. And I think at that time it was called the Provincial Training School. And it wasn't until, I think, 1969 that the Blair Report was published, and the Blair Report really talked about the need to develop community services and not send people, away from their home community to a large institution to live. And Peter Lougheed, when he came out, I think in 71 or 73, really started funding the development of community support. So in the late 60s, there was about maybe 100 people in the community and group homes, that sort of environment. And now I'm not sure how many we have, but I think 10,000 maybe. But, so there was this huge move to develop community services. And prior to the 1960s, families were basically told by the medical profession, forget you ever had that child, and place them in an institution. So at one point, McLeod Centre, as it's now called, had 2,400 people living there. So a huge, huge facility. One side was called the Alberta School Hospital, and the other side called Deer Home, and it amalgamated to be called McLeod Centre. But the good news is that we're, less than 100 people live there now. So we've really, I think, done a fairly good job of developing community supports across the province.
Yeah, that's amazing. And that's what kind of brought you to
well,
into the
I started
activism?
working in the institution, and at one point when our youngest son was born, we were worried because the spinal fluid in his spinal column was not draining properly, and the fluid had the potential to collect in his brain kind of cavities and expand. And there was a realization that if he was going to have a developmental disability, that I would never place him in an institution. And so there's this conflict of values that if I would not have that for my son, why in the world am I working there? And it was not that there was not a lot of new developments at McLeod Centre. The Lougheed government came in and developed, I think, like 20 group homes. They remodeled the whole facility. But at the same time, I didn't want my son to go there. So I then applied for a job and went and worked in Lethbridge as a residential consultant, developing programs, working with nonprofit organizations, developing residential programs, group homes, independent living, approved home programs in the kind of the Lethbridge and broader area. And then I was recruited to come and work in Edmonton as a program planner, I think it was called, and I eventually became the executive director of services to persons with disabilities. And then we created the PDD system of governance. I became the CEO of that program.
What a journey.
Yes, and since my retirement, I have
where that's taken you,
yes,
and how that's changed the system, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Have you guys faced any significant, or maybe not even significant, but what are the challenges that you've faced in advocating or moving into the system where you've had to advocate, either for yourself or for the people around you?
For myself, it was hard because when I first moved into McLeod Centre, I had no idea what was going to happen to my life, and recall as plain as day, the first day when I moved in Michigan Center, my mom was told at that time, and I went to a place called St. Paul for testing. And me and my brother, both brother, and we did, my younger brother, and we went to St. Paul for testing, and to a psychiatrist there, and they said at that time to tell my mom the best place was to put him, one in Michigan Center and one in Winnipeg Stewart School. But in those days, parents had no choice. But when I was admitted there, I was asked to sit on a chair in the back, and my mom and my brother and my sister signed the papers that I would go into Michigan Center. And this gentleman with white jacket, black bow tie, and black shoes, and met us at the door, and he asked me, he said, you go in the other room there and you put on ward clothes. And I put on ward clothes, and I came out there, and my sister was going to take us out for supper. He said, no, he has to get used to this place. So he said, you can leave, and please leave. And he said, we'll look after him. He took me, put my hand behind my back, took me into one room, which was about the same size as this. It was called the day room. Okay. And there was another day room that's called the big boys' day room and the small boys' day room, and there was a chart room. And as I came close to the day room, to the little boys' day room, the gentleman nodded his head, and like, I guess just to tell him that I was here. Mm-hmm. And then I wanted to look out the window. I wanted to see what was going on, because they had the blinds closed. You couldn't see what was going on. So I pushed my chair closer to the window, and I saw my mom, my brother, and my sister pull away. I was devastated. So they gave me a shot of something. I didn't know what it was. I think it was just a relaxer. They gave me a shot of something. It dropped me off on my bed in the dorm. Mm-hmm. I didn't have no supper, no dinner, no nothing. But there you could go home on weekends, on holidays, but you'd have to have a memo saying you were going home. Okay. But if you did something wrong, you'd give you either a blank or stars, and there was side rooms which would put people inside if they did something wrong. Some of us would be given a strap, and if we got something from home, they would open it and you check it just to see if there was nothing in there that wasn't supposed to be there, and your mail, they would go through it. Wow. But that was hard for me, and then gradually I moved up from when I moved into Deerhome, and then I moved into Hillside Apartments in Deerhome. The training center there, and then I moved into Hillside Apartments in Edmonton. Okay. And some of us went to VFRI, and that's when I got but it was so hard because for me to learn how to take buses, how to do my own phoning for doctor, your checkups and all that. Yeah. And I had no idea how to do my own laundry. I had always somebody doing it for me, but I learned the hard way. And I'd never ever blame my parents. Because at that time government had the last word. And the only thing I learned was when you go see government officials, you got to go and talk to them in their level. If you go there screaming and yelling, you're not going to get nothing.
Right, you have to kind of be calm, don't you?
Yeah.
Yeah. So some of your challenges really led you to kind of overcome those, though. And
yes, yeah. It
gained all of this independence.
It made me overcome because I just by sitting on those boards that I sit on, is to look at reality and look at the work that the associations are doing now, supporting families, finding jobs for people, and they're not looking at you for their disability. You're looking at for who you are.
But probably your lived experiences is what helping them understand that, right? Yeah. And can you just tell me what's VFRI?
VFRI, I think that was, I do believe that was another, something like what Hillside Apartments was, which they were moving people in. I don't even know if it even exists.
Centers or something like that,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I can't remember the exact.
No, that's okay. I just didn't know, so I thought maybe
Yeah.
I better ask. Yeah, I hadn't heard that one before, so. Well, thank you so much for sharing that, Roy.
Okay, could you repeat the question
Yeah, of
again,
course.
please?
So what challenges have you faced in your journey learning
gosh.
to be an advocate?
Well, it's interesting in that a lot of the legislation and our own Bill of Rights and the United Nations rights of persons with disabilities, they entrench rights for people, but then people actually have to fight to get those rights in their own life. And I think that's one of the biggest challenges. Obviously, the government says lots of the right things, but then to actually get them to implement can be very difficult. And in defense of government, they have lots of demands from various groups in society wanting money, and then people want less taxes, so there's a conflict there for them. But to ensure that people get the supports they require, that the staff providing those supports are well paid, that people don't have to wait on waiting lists for years to get supports. To try and address all those strategies can be very difficult. Plus changing the service delivery system from institutions to more community supports. So there's lots of variables that you kind of have to balance.
It's very convoluted and hard to pull apart. And one thing is connected to the next. So it's like, how do you make change?
And then I think probably one of the major concerns, and so Roy and I have been working on a national task force on deinstitutionalization, so to close all of the institutions across Canada. Alberta is the only one that still exists. All the others have closed. So there are still people who think congregating people in large settings is the answer to providing supports. And we see that even with seniors. So it's not just confined to our area, but to try and create supports for people to enable them to live in their own home with supports versus being forced to move to someplace where they don't want to actually be, I think is probably the challenge. Because there's always these people that think, oh no, if we do this, it would be better. And we've congregated people before, and it doesn't work.
No. Yeah, and that importance around environment and maintaining relationships, right? Yeah.
And I think there was a survey done recently in Ontario that talked about 90-some% of seniors want to live in their own home. Government is busy building institutions for seniors. It's really the same thing with people with disabilities. They want to live in their own home in the community. And our job is to listen to them and what it is that they're expressing that they would like, and to respond in the best way we can.
No, it's a good parallel. So how did you guys meet? How did you come together?
Well, I travel a lot, and I asked one of the people from Inclusion Canada.
I think we actually first met. I think we both were on Inclusion Alberta's board.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
And then we were both asked to sit on the People First of Canada, Inclusion Canada, National Task Force on Deinstitutionalization.
Okay.
But for me to travel, I have some trouble traveling because I'm not that good. So I asked a lady by the name of Judith Butler from Inclusion Canada. I said, I would like your permission to have Norm to travel with me. She said, sure. So he always said that he was my traveling buddy.
Nice.
And we both got the most, we've got the government award, the Governor General's award.
No, the Queen Elizabeth Diamond Jubilee Award, I think it was.
Wonderful. Was the award related specifically to deinstitutionalization piece
Yes,
that you guys were working on?
and so we were nominated by Inclusion Canada,
Okay.
but because of the work that we were doing, well, probably throughout our careers, but certainly the work around the National Task Force,
Okay.
we were recognized for that. And so then we did a lot of traveling with the task force. I think we traveled to every province in Canada.
Wow.
And I'm still, well, Roy just got recently appointed back on that committee. And Roy is also a member of Inclusion Canada. So when Roy goes to those meetings, he invites me along to be his traveling companion. And so I get to reconnect with folks nationally. Yeah.
But the biggest thing for me is when we were a certain age, when I lived in Michigan Centre, we were a certain age, we got what you call sterilized, and some of the people had their tubes tied. But there was a premier at that time, Premier Manning, who was the head of the sterilization board. He put that together. And when we were told we were going, all we were told is we were going on a trip. We didn't say where. They were told, my parents were told, that it had to be done. They didn't want people making kids inside the Michigan Centre because there was kids and women on one side and men on the other side. And it was tough, you know. But like I said, I have no grudge against my parents. And that time, government officials made that decision. But I still have people saying, we know what you went through. And I said, no, you don't know. You don't know what people with disabilities went through until you've been there yourself. And I always tell families, you know, that just because your child, if he has a person who has a disability, don't look at him for his disability. Look at him for who he is and support people with disabilities. That's what we need to do. And we need to get away from, because at one time people with disabilities were called mongoloids and different, other words, just because they drool, some of them drool. But I said, don't look at them for that. Look at them for who they are, you know. Because we want to be part of society. And I'm so proud that society is gradually getting people involved, you know.
That's why your voice is so important, though, right? For those that don't know and don't understand.
You know, it is important. And I always tell people with disabilities, if you have something to say, say it. Don't be afraid to share your stories, because people can learn. We're all human.
That's right, yeah. And new perspectives sometimes bring new understanding, right? Yeah. So have you guys, you've had these long journeys of advocating and going into all these different systems. How have you stayed motivated? What keeps you motivated to keep fighting for people with disabilities?
Well, I look at it this way, that if I don't keep fighting for people with disabilities, nobody will. And I always tell people, we're not going anywhere, and nobody asked us to. But I remember there was one famous president that said, his name was John F. Kennedy. He said, and I changed the words that he said, ask not what you can do for your country, what you can do, what your country can do for you. And I put it in a different way. I said, ask not what you can do for a person with disabilities. Ask what they can do for you.
Turning it around.
Because he was a very famous, and so was Martin Luther King when he said,
yeah. Very, very prominent men that moved things forward, for sure. So you stay motivated with your internal thoughts and kind of how you stay into the system and keep fighting.
And I even was involved with this Nita Haggerty when there was a lady by the name of Nina herself, and that goes back many years, at the old Nina Haggerty. And it just to look at the people with disabilities here that are come to it, and you can see they enjoy it.
No?
Yeah, I was just thinking, I think Nina Haggerty might have also been at Michener Centre at one point.
Oh, okay.
So it's kind of appropriate that we're meeting here, I think.
Yeah.
I've been just so fortunate over the years to work with people like Roy and families, and have families as mentors in my life, and I think that they are the ones that keep me motivated about, why do you continue doing this work? And I had a 35-year career with government. I've been volunteering for 20-some years, and it's because of the family connections that
you've made.
Yeah, when I retired, Inclusion Alberta asked me to sit on their board, and then Inclusion Canada did, and these are organizations made up of families, and so it's hard not to be inspired by the passion and the commitment that families bring, and it's contagious, and you think, yes, I want to help. So,
yeah. No, that's amazing. Thank you for sharing that. So part of what we're doing here is to create some understanding and help, build some awareness around how do we teach people to be advocates. How would you, if you could do anything to create little advocates coming up in the world, how would you do that?
Well, I think as families, we have a responsibility to talk about kind of the injustices we see in our communities, wherein people are not treated as equals. For whether that's because of their race, their disability, their religious beliefs. We have an obligation to try and create a society where everyone belongs and everyone is treated equal. And I worry about that, and I think that starts at a very young age. And I think the school system is doing a much, much better job now with the inclusion of kids with disabilities. And so, children can work in school right along their peers who might happen to have a disability. So I think they have an advantage over some of us that didn't have that opportunity. So I think, but it goes beyond that. And an organization like John Humphrey, who, promotes human rights, I think it's just so important that we view each other as equals with something unique, but something genuinely different to contribute to society. So,
That's amazing.
Well, and I think something like this is good to support advocacy in the community. So people with disability, so society will know that people with disabilities deserve to be part of the community, and communicate, and something like this would help to make people aware.
No, it does, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Okay. What do you have specific advice you'd give somebody who's trying to learn to advocate, or trying to learn about advocacy?
I would say to come talk to a person that as a self-advocate like me, or come talk to someone that needs to would like to do a presentation, and to explain what self-advocacy is, because I just spoke recently to a youth group on what self-advocacy was, and that worked out good.
That's great advice. I think trying to get that understanding of that lived experience, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Roy has talked about the term self-advocacy, and that you don't like the term self-advocacy because he advocates for everybody, just not himself. And so,
because I sat on the self-advocacy board.
Okay.
When we were matching advocates with proteges. That was a long time ago, but that went under for some reason. There was not enough funding, but it was good. I enjoyed it, but we could have did more.
Okay.
yeah, that's a really Interesting question. I'm not sure I have a good answer for that, but I think that there's lots of opportunities to be engaged in making our communities better.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's school groups that you can engage in that really talk about the inequality of some members in the classroom or in our communities. And there are just all kinds of organizations that are working towards advocating on behalf of particular groups. And one of my hopes is that people realize that there are local organizations that are working towards creating a more just society, and there are provincial organizations, there's national organizations, there's international organizations. We're all trying to create a better world. And we are not just a single voice. There's a multitude of voices trying to create a difference in this world. And sometimes, if I can use the analogy that sometimes we feel like a single snowflake that falls on the back of your hand. We're so light. What doesn't make any difference? What does my voice mean really? But and we see it almost every winter, where the accumulation of all the snow, particularly if it's kind of damp or wet snow, can really cause significant damage and change, break branches and trees or whatever. And so I think our collective voice is kind of like that. Like together we have a strong voice, and it has to be used with some wisdom, or it can cause some damage. But I think there are many organizations around where really that collective wisdom is there to promote and create a better society. So even though our voice may feel very tiny and small, if we join with others, it becomes a very strong, powerful force for change.
But I think the two people that I think have done lots for self-advocacy, just recently, Joey Moss, the one that passed away, I think he was a big influence, because the Oilers hired him as a working in the dressing room. And he always sung that "O Canada." And the other one I'm thinking of is from the Edmonton Sun. What's his name? He has a Cam Tate. Because to me, if you read his article, that comes from sharing experience. And another one was a gentleman that I knew. His name was Eddie Keane. He used to work for 630 Ched. And he always had his opinion, and he never was ashamed. He was never ashamed to talk about people with disabilities. And he said you can't, his favorite word was, you can't put them, you got to look at people with disabilities for who they are. You can't push them behind closed doors.
Can we touch on that a little bit more, Roy? How would you help people understand what it's like, or in your experiences, what it's like to be in that lived experience of having a disability?
I would say sharing stories like I just did, and I think that would help. And talk to families, and talk to other groups, school groups and stuff like that. And if anybody needs, I'd be willing to do that.
Do you have anything to add with that one?
Well, I would just say that I think we've done a really good job of creating supports and services for people in the community. But I think we've lost sight of the bigger picture of creating a society that works for everyone. And so the supports that we develop have to kind of complement that. And I think in some ways they do the opposite. And what we're really trying to do is transform our societies. To be more equal places for everyone. And I think a lot of our supports that we've provided actually do the opposite of that. And and somebody said at one point, we're stumbling over better on our way to best. And I think we need to remind ourselves that what we develop today is the best that we can do, but maybe tomorrow we'll realize that we need to change it to be something better. So.
You're constantly kind of re-evaluating and trying to
Yes,
move forward.
Yeah.
How important that can be.
The other thing I was going to say is I think we have these things at West Edmonton called the family, what you call our board meetings. Sometimes we have our AGMs. Sometimes at West Edmonton Mall.
Okay.
And we have different families. They have different themes.
Okay.
And sometimes it's supporting families, and that's where we get our new board.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you have different themes, and then that work goes towards that theme, and that's what you're trying to change over that next year, I imagine.
Yeah, and I would just say I take a great deal of comfort over, knowing that there are so many people out there advocating for the same thing. And we may, and again, what we develop needs to be based on, the unique needs of the individual, and not a kind of a cookie cutter approach to providing supports. And, I sit on a couple of international committees that are looking at the same thing. So we're just not operating in isolation. We have many hundreds of thousands of people wanting to do provide supports to people in a way that encourages their full participation. So we're not alone in this work. It's we have friends and allies throughout the province and around the world. So
and again, that collective voice with that, right? Okay, I think maybe one of my last questions will be what's around solidarity. So in schools, if there was solidarity between all abilities, what would that look like? How would we get there?
Well, I'm not sure how we'd get there, because I think, I used to think that we could, in my lifetime, I would see all of this kind of accomplished, and now I think it's many lifetimes of work that we will continue to struggle to create a society that's equal, and where we respect and honor everybody's differences. And so I think it's something that we just need to strive for, to remind ourselves, daily that this is the kind of world that we want to create. And I think it's more than just our own local community. It is our province, it's our country, it's universal in its application. We can't do it in one area without doing it everywhere. So
there's nothing in isolation.
No, we are becoming more of a one world community now than we ever have before. And so we need to promote human rights for all. And we will not get there until we respect our human rights. Yeah. Really. It's not about, it is about developing supports in the community, but that has to be based on human rights.
Yes, the foundation has to be
Human rights is the foundation.
Yeah. Did you have anything you'd want to add around that at all?
Nothing around there.
Okay. Do you guys have anything you'd want to add just in general around?
I would say, I think one of the things we're fighting for in Inclusion Alberta is for inclusive education. Because I know the Premier's building schools for certain schools, but it's not for inclusive education. It's some kind of other ones. And I would like to see more people be involved in inclusive education, inclusive classes. And we're doing more. We're doing a lot for family support. We got a family supports groups there that work with families, which Anne and Bruce worked with a lot of people there too, for them.
Can you talk a little bit more about what that means to have an inclusive classroom?
Well, I would like to have people with disabilities included, not discluded, because that was the whole reason of inclusion. Inclusion was to include people, not disclude people, include people in day-to-day life.
Be included in all of the different
Yes,
aspects of school.
I would say too, that I think it's really important to remember that we actually do know how to do this now. There are wonderful examples of children being included in school. There are wonderful examples of people living in community that have a disability and receiving individualized support through individualized funding. We have a multitude of examples, and probably in every community. I certainly know we have lots of them in Alberta and in every province in Canada. We don't need to rethink or reinvent it. We just need to look at what we've already done and say, yes, we know how to do this. Let's actually do it.
Trusting the process.
You know, it's kind of moving it from an individual support that somebody gets to a more broader scale where everybody has the opportunity to live an inclusive life with appropriate supports. Because we, you know, it used to be, well, we don't know how to do this, and let's try and figure it out. No, we know not. We now know how.
Yeah.
And we have wonderful examples everywhere.
Yeah. How do you replicate that? And then make it consistent.
How do we do that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And maintain it.
And maintain it. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I was going to say, the other day I was sharing my experience at Michener's, what it was like at Michener Centre.
Yeah.
And there was a native person was from residential schools.
Okay.
And he said that everything that they had was taken away from them and they were pushed aside. And he said for many years they had nowhere to go. And he was saying that the government needs to do more about that. But he said, yes, the Pope apologized for what happened in those days at the Catholic schools. But he said that's not enough. It should be something that should be written. Like when I was talking about sterilization, we took the government to court. Some of us took the money. Some of us got a letter with an apology. But I took the money, you know, because it was a guy from the Inclusion Alberta that helped us to do that. Because at that time, it was so tough, it was so hard to hear that people were just sterilized. And that, to me, our body was destroyed, you know, when that had happened.
Yeah.
You know, Roy talked a little bit before about, you know, being in a day room, about the size of this room.
Yeah.
And in many of them, when Michener Centre had, you know, 2,400 people living there, there would be rooms like this with this kind of flooring, terrazzo flooring, and walls, terrazzo walls. They would have a bathroom, maybe with 6 toilets. No partitions between the toilets, no toilet seats, no toilet paper. People would be, I guess, herded into an area to have dinner or breakfast or whatever. They would be in a dorm with
cubicles.
Well, some of them had cubicles, but a lot of them didn't. It would be just a straight room with like 24, 30 beds on one side, 35 beds on one side, and so there was no privacy, whatsoever, and they didn't have their own, you know, access to their own clothes. They were given kind of ward clothing to wear. So, you know, when you consider that's our history, you know, we have come a long ways, but there's so much further to go.
Yeah.
But then at that one time, people were afraid even to talk about what happened in those days. But now you're getting people starting to talk about it, like I was. Like I was afraid even to. I said, "Oh, people wouldn't listen," but people were listening to what I had to say.
Yeah, so brave.
And Roy, you know, talked about sterilization, the eugenics board, and there was a lawsuit around that. But the lawsuit, people forget that the lawsuit also gave compensation for physical abuse, sexual abuse, wrongful confinement. Those were all part of the lawsuit. And it seems to have centered mostly on the eugenics part of it, but
But
there were also many people who complained about being abused physically, sexually, and whatnot. So that was part of that. So,
But I think one of the biggest issues right now we're having is that about euthanization, because there were some people we went and we talked about this in Ottawa when it was inclusion. It was not inclusion Canada. It was another name, and there was a guy by the name of Audrey Cole, a lady by the name of Audrey Cole, and I can't remember his other name, but he went to the sterilization to the government, to the government, and they explained, that we were against bioethics, against putting people's life in danger. And then now we got this other issue that we're looking at, and it's called Track 2, and that's where you could be injected with that thing to injure life. And we said nobody has the right to do that. That's killing. That's killing people. But then a lot of people do, and it went to the government, and the court said that we could do something about it. But now it's back with the government. The government's holding, stalling on some of the stuff on bioethics. I do believe. Norm could talk more about that.
And the fear is really not so much around, well, the issue is not with those people who are near death. It's that appropriate supports will not be given to a person with a disability. And their life will be seen as not worth living. And if they don't get the appropriate supports, then they may request, or somebody may say, well, let's offer MAID to them as one of the options. And often, well, not often, we're concerned about that being kind of the position that governments may take in the future, that, it's an equal, well, you can have this or you can have this. And offering somebody the option of dying without providing supports is, I think that's criminal.
And then what do those supports look like? Again, with the
exactly.
being built and maintaining them and making sure it's consistent. Yeah. And again, we don't know until the decisions we make now don't necessarily know what the outcome of those will be, right?
That's right.
Okay. Is there anything else you'd want to add, or anything I'm missing? Any questions you can think of that we haven't talked about? No, I think we've covered.
Yeah, but I just want to thank you guys for letting me asking me and Norm to be involved in this. And I think this will be a great help to you and for everyone.
I think it will be too. Thank you so much
to say that Canada really is seen as a leader in providing supports to people with intellectual or developmental disabilities.
Yeah.
And I find that a bit surprising, because I think there's so much more we need to do.
Yeah.
But in comparing with other countries, we're looked at as leaders internationally. So and that's a lot because of the work that Roy and family members have done. And I think the best advice I can give to professionals is to really, just listen to what it is that people with disabilities are saying they need. Listen to families, and then just do the best you can to respond to their expressed needs.
That's all we can do.
That's really what it's about, I think.
I think the part about including too, right? The lived experience. You talked about the boards you've been on, that a lot of them are family members, and Roy being on boards, how important it is to have those multitude of different voices of people involved, right?
Yeah, and again, we know how to do this. It's not it's not new.
No, but it needs to be supported.
Can I take this off?
I'm going to say thank you first. Thank you for being part of this.
Thanks for
from
including
John
us.
Humphrey
My gosh.
Centre. Thank you so much.
I can take it off?
Yeah.